Hello and welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones and we are so glad to have you here. With the holidays approaching, getting together with family is likely on the menu. Aside from talking turkey, talking politics can add a little zest to the table. Standing by to help us navigate these conversations is Dr. Tara Chalakani, CEO of New Jersey-based Preferred Behavioral Health Group. First, though, with the rise of online sports betting, New Jersey has seen major economic benefits. But there is a growing crisis that can't be ignored, and that's problem gambling. State Senator John McKeon is pushing for urgent action after recent hearings highlighted the alarming rate of gambling addiction, especially among young people. Today, Senator McKeon joins us to discuss the human impact of gambling, the legislation he's introduced to protect vulnerable residents, and the needs for stronger safeguards in the industry. Senator, thank you for being here. It's so good to see you.
It's so good to see you as well, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, Senator, you've described gambling addiction as a growing crisis in New Jersey. So, can you tell us a little bit about some of the more alarming findings that you've discovered during some recent hearings in Trenton?
Well, sure. We know just from the social science that if you're going to gamble, that about between 2 to 5% of those individuals are going to become problem gamblers. Now, in New Jersey, we know through our recent hearings that almost half of all of New Jerseyans gamble in some form or the other. So the statistics vis-a-vis Rutgers is 5.6% of New Jerseyans become problem gamblers. And if you juxtapose that number, that's 200,000 New Jerseyans have that issue. And by problem, I mean, we're talking about like a DSM-5 diagnosis. And without getting into those nuances, what that means, it just destroys the rhythms of life, whether it's jobs, relationships, sleep, credit scores, more apt to be bankruptcy or have run up credit card bills, and more dual diagnosis with anxiety and depression that goes with that. So this is a serious mental health issue that we've created. And I know online gambling isn't going away. I support Atlantic City, but at the end of the day, with the proliferation of the gaming, we need to get ahead of the game as opposed to just react.
Yeah, addiction affects so much more than just the individual who is addicted. It affects relationships, families, work. There's a ripple effect. And so you mentioned nearly 200,000 New Jerseyans facing a gambling addiction, and a lot starting at a young age. So what specific protections are you hoping to put in place?
You make a great point, by the way, because for whatever one person that has the problem, there are 7 that are impacted. So now do that math, 200 times 7, and there's just about a good half of us in the state that get impacted that way. I have a whole array of pieces of legislation. One, quite frankly, is that industry on the online gaming alone made more than $8 billion. I mean, $1 billion of profit last year. They should be taxed at a rate that in part will create funds to deal with these societal problems and places like Gamblers Anonymous and otherwise. You mentioned young people, and unbelievable, they've seen over at the Gambling Helpline a 277% increase over the last several years since sports gaming has become legal, and increasing in calls for those under the age of 34. Look, let's not be so scientific. Go into a high school and say, hey, has anybody gambled online before? And I bet if they're going to be honest, 90% of the class is going to raise their hand. They have these sweepstakes formulas now that garner in young children. They give them points as opposed to money, but it's like the candy cigarettes of yesteryear. They're just looking to pull them in. So we have a whole array of legislation, one of which is to prohibit those type of sites for minors, which are meant just, again, to get them addicted or acclimated into betting. We have others that relate to creating a more equitable tax system as opposed to 15% as they're now taxed. Like Pennsylvania is in the 50s, New York is in the 40s. It's not like you're going to go across the river to gamble. That we won't lose anybody whatsoever, and it will again create the funds that we need to better combat this. Dealing with advertising, the advertising proliferation. You mentioned Thanksgiving. If you're watching some football or other sports, just every other commercial on the radio, on TV. There should be warning signs, just like there were on packs of cigarettes. We know better. Gambling rush comes, it's physiological, just like nicotine. With a gambling rush, it's dopamine, and it's instant gratification, and we know better. So it's, again, time for us to get ahead of the curve and to try to help those who have this propensity to, fall into those categories of problem gambler. A, keep it from happening best we can, and C, and I guess B, to treat it when it happens.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a striking statistic from Rutgers is showing that online gambling is really popular among 18 to 24-year-olds. And when you look at, why is this age group so drawn to online betting and how can we help them? You're saying it's happening way younger. Almost like, again, when we were little, they had the Camel cigarettes. They advertised through cartoon characters, through Play cigarettes. So can you talk a little bit about how to help these? By the time they're 18 to 24, they might already be addicted. So how can we help?
There's no question, and that's why, in part, we want to make illegal these sites that allow it to happen for points, because again, it's just getting them conditioned to gamble, and then they deal with illegal sites and go ahead and gamble anyway. I was mentioning those high schoolers and kids in college, for that matter, and what they do. To deal with warning labels, frankly, to deal with advertising. You make a great point. We took off the camel because it was a cartoon. What do we do now? The thing that means a lot to especially adolescent boys and girls is sports, and that's all they see. That's all they hear. We need to get a handle and understand, hey, the money is great that we bring into the coffers. The money is great that gets shared with brick and mortar in Atlantic City to help keep those jobs intact. But at the end of the day, they come at a cost. Yeah. And we have to recognize that and really should partner with the industry and my colleagues in the legislature to do the right thing.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the, well, I didn't mean to step on you there, but you have introduced several bills to address gambling issues, holding casinos accountable, increasing taxes, establishing public awareness campaigns. So can you tell us a little bit about the goals of this legislation that you are behind and it's making its way through Trenton?
Well, you did a great job in just summarizing them, and it's all with the collective goal of, again, keeping people from having a problem and those who have the problem in assisting with them. You just think about this from a civil liability perspective. There is no civil liability for a gamer as it relates to the consequences of these individuals. Nobody's protected like that, not even the gun industry. There's at least a sliver that they left for the gun industry to be held accountable when there's tragedies as there are. Total immunity. I have a piece of legislation that says, look, when they act in a reckless way, when they allow somebody that they know to be a problem gambler who themselves can put themselves on a do not fly list, and then they take themselves off, and the casino takes them in anyway, or the online gamers, I know that they're trying, and they'll come on to the contrary and say we do X, Y, and Z with our logarithms, algorithms, etc. But at the end of the day, it's not working. Over 5% of New Jerseyans that gamble are problem gamblers. That's a problem for all of us.
Yeah, and this, you see it comparing, this, to the cigarette use. You see this as a public health issue, not just a finance. You see this as a public health issue, correct?
There's no question. Again, we can't be, made dependent on this revenue that's come in. And to the extent that there's ancillary parts of the economy, there are jobs and created and otherwise, but like at what cost? We have to deal with it. And trust me, when you're dealing with 200,000 problem gamblers and the fallout for all the people in their lives that are impacted, that's going to outweigh the long-term benefits, if you will, of the direct revenue coming in. Again, I'm not advocating stopping this at all. It's something that had always gone on from an illegal perspective. Now that it's legal, it just happens so much more. We just need to, and this is new to us, right? We just made it legal in 2018 as far as the sports gaming. We now have to get a handle on the success, understand the fallout, and we as the legislature need to rein it in some and hopefully partner with this industry.
Well, I mean, because, we have our casinos in Atlantic City, which are slowly dying, closing. Again, 90% of the sports base placed in New Jersey are placed online. So that's an extraordinary challenge when you talk about regulating the virtual landscape, social media, all of this, really the wild west of that virtual landscape.
No, I think, that the online and sports gaming online has really created under our law the revenue stream that has helped to, to keep our brick and mortar casinos open. I hope that continues. We're the only state in the country that kind of does it that way as it relates to the licensure. But I'm no futurist, but if you look at places that don't have that system, why are these brick and mortar casinos even going to remain open? Number one, the generation is used to doing stuff, on the little device in their hand. And number two, it costs a lot of money to open and run a casino that you walk into, as opposed to, 10 people that can deal with, a website, if you will.
Yeah.
So that's in the long run. Hopefully, the way our law is set up, New Jersey will again get the benefit of our bricks and mortar, so we can keep those jobs we want to.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
at the end of the day, you're right in what you said. There's nothing that's happened with online that's increased any foot traffic to Atlantic City, or certainly sports gaming. I think it's even less than 90% happens online.
Yeah, yeah. So just final thoughts here. If people here are struggling with a gaming addiction, where can they find resources? What should they know about the support available here in New Jersey?
Well, sure. I'm sorry, and maybe your department could flash something up the screen. I know we've got a Gamblers Anonymous. We've got a 1-800 helpline, which I mentioned before is just overtaxed with the number of calls they have, but it's helpful for those who might see this at home to know that there's a place for them to turn and that there is help.
All right.
We just want to get it financed to the point of dealing with the task at hand.
Senator John McKeon, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you again for having me.
Some of the biggest challenges I face as a student athlete is managing my athletic work and my schoolwork.
To prevent our student athletes from falling into academic distress, we created a program called Gamer. Each team works with an athletics academic liaison to increase graduation and retention rates.
The turning point that I saw is my grades went up.
What has helped me the most is definitely tutoring. My academics have just skyrocketed.
The ultimate goal is for our student athletes to have that championship moment on the field and day of graduation.
As the holiday season approaches, many of us look forward to gathering with loved ones, but we know it can also bring challenges, especially when conversations turn to sensitive topics like politics. Joining us today to help us navigate these tricky discussions is Dr. Tara Chalakani, CEO of New Jersey-based Preferred Behavioral Health Group and co-host of the Well Off podcast. Doctor, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
You as well, Laura. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Well, the holidays, they can bring up a lot of stress for family under the best of situations, but especially now when it turns political. So what advice do you have, aside from flat out avoiding it, for navigating these conversations that I don't think we're going to get around?
Sure. I know, we would think that an election would bring some peace and closure, but obviously people still have very strong feelings and opinions. And like you said, we can't avoid the holidays, we can't avoid our families, but we can do some things that can hopefully lessen the tension around the dinner table. And the first thing is to, I think, when we create an invitation or we decide on a time for dinner, to just create some boundaries where we say, this is a wonderful holiday. We know everyone has their feelings and we respect them, but we would love it if everyone could just put politics on hold for now, and let's just make this a family-centric dinner without discussion of heated topics. So I think laying down the groundwork and establishing boundaries is always a good way to go. But if that's unavoidable, and in many families and around friends it is, we have to just, number one, really seek to understand and have curiosity when we approach our loved ones when they have really strong opinions, and not take it personally. I mean, at the end of the day, regardless of what side of the aisle that you reside on, we're entitled to our opinions and we're entitled to our beliefs, and we have to have humility and respect our loved ones and know that for some reason, they have strong beliefs, and we have to seek to really understand what that means for them.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I didn't mean to step on you there. That really is good advice. Just having rules right off the top. Hey, here are the rules. As much as, people are all sitting down at this time, or what? here are some rules. Because it's really easy for some people. I mean, people get triggered, and it's called a trigger for a reason, right? And they may not even anticipate, or somebody will bring up something that they don't necessarily intend to. So if this happens and you are triggered, or you're having a hard time keeping your mouth shut, are there strategies you recommend for at least keeping the discussions respectful if they do come up?
For sure. I mean, we can always walk away from something. There's a wonderful saying that you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. So go wash some dishes, you help in the kitchen. If someone's talking about something that's uncomfortable, remove yourself from the situation. Don't keep yourself there and continually, as you said, be triggered, because it is very triggering. And again, a lot of people have anxiety not knowing what to expect. So entering the space of someone with very strong beliefs that differ from yours can create anxiety. So if you know that from the offset, oh, thank goodness, we're leaving politics at the door, there will be no discussion of politics, pardon me, it does really bring those anxieties down before you even arrive. Because when you arrive to anything with your haunches up and a very heightened level of anxiety, that's never a good baseline to start a discussion anyhow.
Yeah, I mean, and I've been guilty of this myself, not necessarily around politics, but there are certain subjects that are very, I will come in raw and I'll have to remind myself, okay, we're not this is not the place to hash things out. But is there advice you have on how to recognize and manage those emotions? Because again, emotions don't make sense. That you can't always control it. But is there a way that we can prepare and recognize and manage it if a family member does say something that is triggering?
Sure. And I mean, preparation is key. If you're going on a trip, you're going to pack a suitcase with necessities. So if you're going to enter a space where you know that there's potential for contentious discussion, you have to kind of have a safety plan for yourself. And again, that what I mentioned earlier, removing yourself, leaving a room. You don't have to sit at a table if you kind of feel yourself getting revved up or upset. And also, I think that we all have a good instinct on when there's just no hope, right? If we know we're really trying to get a point across and the other person isn't receiving it, we need to really recognize that and not continue to press and push buttons with the other person, because if we know it's an exercise in futility, we really need to know when to stop. Yeah. Just like if we're exercising too much and we're out of breath, we need to tone it back, right? That old song by Kenny Rogers, you got to know when to hold him and when to fold him, right? It's kind of like that same mentality. If you know the conversation is going nowhere, you need to stop. You need to know when to press the pause, pivot, change the subject, stop trying to get your point across, because we already know this. There are some people that are just not going to receive it no matter how hard we try.
Well, they're not going to receive it. And some people who like to just push the buttons just to see if they can to bait you. Can you talk a little bit about active listening and what role active listening can play in keeping conversations going, but from becoming too heated, and how we can actually practice active listening?
Sure. So active listening is really listening with the intent of deeply understanding the person who's speaking to you. So ways to, instead of getting defensive and immediately wanting to jump in, ask a question or reflect back, like, what I think I heard you say is, right? Rather than jumping right into defense, try to clarify and make the other person accountable to maybe give a deeper explanation. Because very often when we do that, or we say, forgive me, I might have misunderstood. This is what I heard. When you reflect it back, they may say, no, that's not what I said at all. And there's an opportunity in that space, Laura, to get some clarity and maybe a little bit of peace versus war, right? Yeah. You don't want to jump right into an argument. So really taking the time, listening without the intent of jumping in and having to speak. And I always, when I'm working with clients, I ask them to use the acronym WAIT. Why am I talking? So before you're tempted to open up your mouth or jump right into a response, give yourself a second. Like, why am I talking right now? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Is it helpful? Is it really going to change what's going on here? And I think it just, if we can apply that in all circumstances, we would be better communicators with healthy relationships. But in these fragile, inflammatory times of post-election contention, we really need to practice that more.
And I've also heard people, as one of their tools that they use is saying, could you repeat that? Because sometimes it isn't what people are saying, it's the tone of how they're saying it. And there's it's loaded. But when you say, can you repeat that again? I'm not sure I understood you. If the person is trying to get a rise out of you, if they have to repeat it, then it is like making them have to repeat that, and maybe they will get a clue as to, oh, this is not coming off the right way, or I'm about ready to start something.
Sure.
Yeah. So, and I like that. Wait, what am I talking about?
Which is in alignment, Laura, with not taking anything personally and not assuming. The old adage is we don't assume, we know why. And we never want to assume that we know what someone means. So asking questions more than debating and trying to prove our point or impress someone with our position, it's really important to, again, have that curiosity. Say, I'm wondering what you meant by that, versus finger pointing, or you're narrow-minded, or, you're not seeing my point. No one likes to be scolded.
Yeah.
So if we can just own what we're saying, approach people with those good questions, question ourselves regarding why are we talking right now? And again, does it really need to be said? We can really set the table for a lovely holiday and have a stress-free exchange with loved ones.
So for those hosting the gathering, that's kind of, maybe that's part of their menu as well. Steps that can be taken to set a positive tone or establish those boundaries for the conversation. There was a show on HBO, it was called Curb Your Enthusiasm. It was created by the creator of Seinfeld, and there was a great scene where they're having a dinner party and they had somebody called the middler, and it was somebody who was in the middle, like facilitating conversation. So when it comes to being a host and hosting these conversations, careful about who sits where, and careful about ensuring you have control over, as much as you can, over the boundaries, because it is your home, your party, your table, your family room, what have you. Advice on that?
For sure. I mean, whoever's hosting really is in control. So I think setting the tone before the event starts, whether it's an email, an evite, a text thread, just being really upbeat and positive, and we're looking so forward to gathering, and we want this to be a wonderful event and an occasion. So, we're kindly asking that we keep strong political, jargon and conversation at the door. But I also think it's a good idea to assign a level-headed person who's a good communicator to maybe keep an eye out. And if they're observing or overhearing things getting heated, to perhaps be that middler, which was a great episode.
You saw it too.
Yeah, I love it. And
middler.
And the funny thing is, I was just talking to someone yesterday. I was at an event recently, and every table was assigned a shusher. So if there was a lot of chatter, that person had the designation of keeping everybody quiet, and it worked brilliantly.
That's
so
awesome.
I think we all need a shusher who's gentle and a great communicator who might say, you know what, this is getting a little tense. This is a beautiful holiday. Let's talk about something positive. Task someone just like you would, someone to bring an item to or a plate, a dish to dinner. Maybe assign someone, like if you have a therapist like me at your Thanksgiving dinner table, make that person kind of the unofficial eyes and ears and diversion from tense conversations.
Yeah, I love it. A shusher and a middler. And,
Yes.
and I guess when all else fails, just have a few little standbys like, how about the weather? How would you see the game? To gracefully change the subject if things become tense.
Or, if it's after dinner, let's play a game. We're big LCR fans in my house after Thanksgiving. It's a fun game. Trying to create a different environment. We're all healing from a very difficult election process. A lot of people are not happy with where things landed, but that doesn't mean we have to perpetuate it. We have to start healing. We have to start normalizing, coming back together, and being able to have conversations in a civil manner that are respectful and, in a forward fashion motion. We don't want to be stuck here. We want to be able to have holidays and no longer worry about division and being separate.
Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing your thoughts. And I'm going to be thinking about the middler and the shusher. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
Absolutely. And we thank you so much for watching New Jersey Politics. I'm Laura Jones. We look forward to seeing you back here next time.
Nothing has ever been handed to me. I've had to work for it. On the field. And off the field. Kane worked with me. Guided me. Helped me climb higher. To get where I belong. To change my life.
Hey, welcome to the team.
Cougars climb higher. Kane University.